Hey, I'm Anne, and this is the Metta Interview, intimate conversations with brilliant humans, contributors to Trente. Named for the Buddhist practice of metta, also known as loving kindness, this show brings unconditional friendliness to how we meet each other. Rather than traditional interviews showcasing expertise, each episode gathers around a question that feels alive for my guest at the moment of the recording. The goal here is for us not just to explore what they know or what they do, but really more who they are, their stories, their questions, the perspectives that shape their work. Think about it as eavesdropping on an exchange between friends. It's recorded so that you get to see all the hands gestures, the thoughtful pauses, although sometimes I cut out some of them. And all of those perfect imperfections that make us human. I deeply believe that all of us carry one or several questions throughout our lives, questions that our work, our relationships, our choices are really an attempt to answer. Now, by building each conversation around one of those alive questions, I hope to make this the little black dress of podcasts, timeless rather than trendy. And yes, what you may not know about me is that I spent many years in fashion, most recently at Christian Louboutin. And so when I reach for that particular metaphor, there's a little lived experience behind it. What I learned in those years is that the most enduring things in fashion and in life are the ones conceived with genuine care about the people who it's for. And that's what I've tried to bring to this format: care for the listener and care for the person sitting across from me who has agreed to touch on questions that matter, to show up with a certain vulnerability. And I hope that you feel that in this and every episode. Now, today I'm delighted to be sharing this meta conversation with another brilliant human, Oana Budica. We were introduced a while back by a common friend, and we had the pleasure to get to know each other slowly as Oana joined several of my salons. We found a lot of common ground in talking about values, integrity, presence, and meditation. So it felt quite like the natural next step for me to invite her to offer a masterclass for Trente, which is coming up on March 14th. So do look it up. The link is in the show notes. But let me go back a step and introduce her properly. Oana Budica is a Chinese medicine physician, acupuncturist, and herbal medicine practitioner based in Geneva, Switzerland. Originally from Romania, she has spent over a decade moving between clinical practice and serious contemplative training, studying acupuncture and classical herbal medicine across Asia, and completing rigorous meditation retreats in Theravāda monasteries in Thailand and Myanmar. For Oana, these are not separate pursuits. She sees Chinese medicine and meditation as complementary sciences of perception, both requiring the same refined attention, the same capacity to observe what is subtle without distortion. In this conversation, we travel from the forests of her Romanian childhood all the way to a cave in the Himalayas and back to a clinic in Geneva where she sits with patients navigating burnout, anxiety, and other ailments. With over a decade of clinical experience, her work focuses on the relationship between emotional states, nervous system regulation, and physiological balance. Her alive question, the one she brought to our recording, is one that I think many of us are quietly living with too. How to stay aligned with what truly matters in order to create the life we're dreaming of. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Happy listening. Oana, it's so lovely to see you. Thank you so much for being on the Meta Interview.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you for having me as a guest today. I'm really honored to be part of your amazing Trente studio.
Thank you so much. So before we dive in, I would love to ask you this question. What is bringing you joy or excitement these days? And it doesn't need to be anything big. It could be anything that comes up to your mind.
It's a very, very good question, because I just came back from my winter holidays, and that was the theme of my holidays, where I actually reconnected with what brings me joy. And I think number one is time in nature. I really love nature, and I think nature is the greatest healer. And just, simplicity, being outside, breathing fresh air, drinking clean water, spending time with people I love and people that inspire me. So these days, just, friendship and nice relationships.
Now, I would like to ask you this annoying thing for many of us. Could you introduce yourself for our audience?
Sure. So my name is Oana Budica, and I'm originally from Romania, but I'm based in Geneva, Switzerland. And I'm a Chinese medicine physician. I work as an acupuncturist and herbal medicine practitioner in a clinic here in Geneva. And the rest of the time when I'm not in the clinic, I'm very passionate about yoga philosophy and meditation. So I practice meditation and Dharma, and yes.
And yes. And if I'm correct, you're also a big lover of swimming, and you do something called freediving. Am I correct?
Yes, that's true. That's another passion of mine that I recently discovered, well, like 2 years ago. So I love freediving because it's really a way to relax your nervous system in a very fast way, actually. So I started to do that before initially because I was afraid of water and I didn't know how to swim really well. And I was like, I need to get over this fear, like I need a challenge in life to make me feel complete, right? So I started to free dive, and I discovered through that breath work and how that helps us to activate our parasympathetic nervous system in a much faster way. So it's great for anyone who has the audacity and the chance to do it. Go for it. It's really great.
Yeah, I've never tried, but I have to say this does feel tempting when you talk about it.
Yeah.
So at the core of the meta interview, I try to bring out in my guests some of the multiple facets that makes them who they are. And so the next few questions are really there for me to try and, tease stories out of you, not necessarily stories that really tell everything about you, right? What we want is just to give people a feel for Oana. So I'd love to hear you tell me, is there a childhood memory that you can think of in this moment that you feel connected to and that still makes you smile?
Childhood memory. This just popped up in my mind right now, was a memory when I was picking mushrooms with my grandfather in the Romanian forests. And it was such a joyful, free time, and silent and simple, and just, I don't know, I can even feel the smell of the mushrooms being picked. And yeah, it just makes me happy. I think in Romania, we are very much connected to nature and plants and herbs. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I chose to practice Chinese medicine later on. Because, like, for instance, in my family, we had a lot of connection to plants and herbs. And yeah, it just brings me back to that moment. Even I can see the herbs hanging in my grandmother's kitchen and the smell of mushrooms drying out on the table. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's amazing, because I'm feeling the picture come together in my mind as you tell me that story.
Yeah.
What was your grandfather like?
He was an adventurer. And he was wearing always a leather hat. And he was fun. He was making jokes with everyone, and generally loved to have lots of adventure in his life. So yeah, I miss him greatly, actually.
He sounds a bit like Romanian Indiana Jones.
Yeah, a little bit like that. Actually, the hat was like Indiana Jones style. So, yeah, pretty much.
Glad I asked you that question.
He was putting the feather on and everything. So yeah.
I'm sure he'd be very impressed by your freediving, by the way. I can see a connection between you somehow, between these two things. How funny.
Yeah, could be, yeah.
So this is funny, because the next question that I had for you was, You may have answered it in part, but I'm sure there's another connection here. What's an early experience in your life that you think has planted the seeds for the work you do now? And perhaps we've already found a connection, right? A thread between nature, herbs, connection to your grandparents. But perhaps we can turn our attention to meditation or yoga philosophy. Mm-hmm. Where did that thread or that seed get planted, do you think?
Yes, I actually know it very well because it was really for me a turning point in my life. And yeah, so that was 19 years old. And I was already practicing a little bit of Kundalini yoga, but literally like I was doing things that I was finding on YouTube and following the classes. And then I had a book or two, but nothing very serious. And I was already a little bit passionate about Oriental philosophy, but more like a global idea, right? I didn't go so deep into the subject. And I remember I was traveling in the south of France, visiting a friend of mine who was at the time practicing a lot of Vipassana meditation. And I don't know what happened. We had an argument about something and I was trying to prove a point to him. And he told me that I had a huge ego. And when he told me that, it really hurt me a lot. And I remember crying for a few days and I didn't know really why was it bringing so much unsatisfactoriness inside of me. And so I think from that moment on, I really wanted to find out what is ego and what is this kind of thing that is inside of me that is not fully satisfied, and what is inside of me that always thinks grass is greener. And yeah, I just had this big question in my mind to find out what that is. And actually that brought me on a decade-long journey trip to Asia, where I really deepened my mind into understanding what that ego was. So yeah, that was the adventure.
I'm so glad I asked that question. Okay.
Like you always do. You're the best at asking the right questions.
Thank you so much. That feels very nourishing as a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have various passions and various facets of interest in your life. When did you first consciously start to make a move towards Chinese traditional medicine and acupuncture?
So yeah, that all happened all at the same time, because since I was already interested in yoga philosophy, then I traveled to India and I met my teacher, my mentor, and he talked to me about Chinese medicine. And I started to study Shiatsu, which is a Japanese Zen massage therapy. And Shiatsu is based on Chinese medicine theory, including the acupuncture meridians and everything. So then I traveled with my teacher and I was her teacher assistant in the Shiatsu courses that we were giving where we were based in India. Then we traveled to Korea and to Japan together. And then I thought to myself, okay, since I already know all these things and all the theory of Chinese medicine, I might as well go and study the full Chinese medicine degree. So I went to China and I studied in Shanghai. And yeah, I'm still a student now. I'm learning all the time. And I think medical studies never end, really. So yeah.
How long did you stay in Shanghai?
Well, it was very funny because I started my degree right before COVID started. And so I was stuck outside China during COVID. So I was in Shanghai for a year, and then the rest of the period I was actually outside because we couldn't go back to the campus. So, and then I had to transfer to Switzerland. And yeah, long story short, it was a year.
That must have been really awful, especially with being so close to your goal, right? To deepen your studies, which I can feel is something that was important to you.
Yes, I mean, it was difficult, but I was lucky enough because I have already been to Shanghai, to the same university before for a few advanced acupuncture trainings. And then I went to Taiwan, and I spent 6 months in Taiwan practicing with a lovely doctor that I really, really liked. And then I lived one year in South Korea. So I did a lot of clinical training, and I didn't feel like I'm missing that part, because luckily there were other countries that were open during COVID. So I did my clinical training in different hospitals and following different doctors. So yeah, that worked out really, really well. And also I did another internship in the US. So yeah, it just allowed me to travel more, basically.
Hold on. If I remember correctly, you worked in the US with someone who really, I don't know how to formulate the question, with a teacher that was very important. Am I right? If so, please tell me that story.
That's probably my teacher, Dr. Arnaud Versluis, who is my teacher in herbal medicine. And yeah, who is, he holds this Institute of Classics in East Asian Medicine, of which I'm also a diplomate. And basically, it's a lineage of herbal medicine based on a special pulse diagnosis. So he received all his teachings from his teacher and his teacher from his teacher. And it's basically a family lineage, which is the way pretty much all classical Chinese medicine is being passed on. And so I had the privilege and the good karma, I may say, to meet him. And this is the style of herbal medicine that I practice as well.
Now, I know some people who are going to listen to this are going to say, I'm sorry, you said what kind of medicine? Did you say pulse?
Chinese medicine, it's a complete medical system, and we have different ways to diagnose the human body. Through the pulse mainly, and also through your symptoms, obviously, but also through your tongue. So specifically in the pulse, obviously, the pulse is being taken on your radial artery right here. So obviously we can feel the beating of the heart, right? And the movement of blood in the radial artery. But more than that, we are not only looking for the cardiac frequency or the rhythm of the heart, if it's slow or fast, etc. We are also looking for different pathological mechanisms of each organ. So we have basically 3 positions, and each position relates to a certain organ, and it has a certain depth. So we can see, for example, if your stomach has too much humidity or too much fire, if your kidneys have too much cold, or if there is any imbalance in the specific organ systems. And based on that pulse diagnosis, a trained practitioner will then prescribe you herbal formula, which is a mix of 5 to 10 herbs that come from the Chinese pharmacology. And the formula is matching the pulse, basically, right? So after you drink this medication, then you will see a change in the pulse and, of course, in the symptoms as well.
That was exquisitely clear. And it's funny because I have been going to a Chinese medical doctor and I've never asked them to explain anything to me. I just give them my, wrist.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
I asked the question because I couldn't explain it to anyone, right?
Yes. And many patients come and then they show me their Whoop and it's like, oh, look, it's that much. You don't need to listen to my pulse. I'll show you my Whoop app. I'm like, wait, we are not looking just for that. So, yeah.
Sure. That's so funny. Now, if you could describe your professional journey as a kind of journey, it could be, I don't know, a flight, a road trip, a cruise, a dance. How would you describe your professional journey?
I think it was from the moment I found out that I wanted to be a therapist and to dedicate my life to, easing the suffering of others. I think it was like a very smooth cruise, but sometimes there were storms on the sea. Okay. So including the COVID, and also, I was traveling a lot. I was moving a lot. I lived 10 years in Asia, and at the same time, I was studying Chinese medicine. I was also practicing so I can support myself financially. And also I was doing some meditation retreats in monasteries. So, I had to combine all of that at the same time, and somehow I managed. But obviously it wasn't super easy at times, right? Because I was a student and I was a traveler and I was not in my country, and I was learning something that was very new to me, right? Chinese medicine is very different. We don't learn how to think in 5 elements and in yin-yang philosophy very quickly, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds intense, but I had a feeling that your journey would be water related somehow.
Yeah, hence the free diving.
Now,
It's still in the water.
I don't know. I still felt your connection, yeah, somehow to that and to some kind of element. Now, over the last few years, and it could be in the meditation realm or the yoga philosophy or around acupuncture and Chinese medicine, what is a skill that you've learned, that you've acquired, that still surprises you, that you didn't expect to develop?
I think pulse diagnosis, to be entirely honest with you. I'm always I'm always so humbled and surprised, even myself, after, clinical training and knowing that this is this medical system. I still get very surprised when just by touching the pulse, I know the symptoms of the patient in front of me, even if they don't tell me. And then when I ask, they tell me, "Oh, how did you know that?" So it still
It's the
amazes me
weirdest
every
thing. It
day.
feels like magic. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy. As a patient, it feels really weird. It's like, are you looking into my soul? And
Yeah.
I don't mean to put down the Western medical system because it does wonderful things, but I
Of
feel
course.
like there's just a very the Chinese medical systems feels like there's somehow a deeper layer to it.
Mm-mm. I mean, yeah, sure. It's just a different system, right? We have Western medicine, which is a biomedical system, which sees everything separated from one organ, one symptom. And then there is the Chinese medical system, which is a holistic system where we consider the body, the mind, and also the environment that affects us, right? So diseases or whatever imbalances in the body can come from climatic factors, like it's windy or it's cold or it's humid outside, and that affects our body, right? So there's this relationship to the environment. I think that's pretty much the difference.
Yeah. Now, if your life were a book, what do you think the current chapter would be called?
The current chapter will be called Building the Life You Dream of While Staying Integral.
Could that be the name of the book rather than the
Yeah,
name of the
yeah,
chapter?
yeah. Yes, yeah, yeah. Maybe yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Sorry. For our listeners,
Yes.
I would not just say that to anyone. I feel like, we did a pre-interview. And I have done some work together. So yeah, I felt so. What about this current chapter where you're at? Because you're in the weeds of something new.
Yes, completely. Yeah, yeah.
Now, one of the moments in your life that I know was really incredibly important is how you met your teacher, the one with whom you studied for a number of years in India. How did you meet your teacher? And tell us how this part of your story unfolded.
Yeah, so you remember when my friend told me I had a big ego, and that was the first time I
Oh,
went
yeah.
to India, and then I came. So on my second trip to India, I was 21 years old, and I went on a small pilgrimage in the north of India, in the Himalayas, and I met my teacher there. I was with a friend of mine who was an artist back in the days, also from Romania. We were traveling together, and I met my teacher. He was actually living in a cave in the mountains, and I was also camping with my friend there, and I met him there. And the moment I met him, I knew he's gonna be my teacher and the person that taught me everything about yoga philosophy and meditation and everything. And yeah, this was really the moment where everything started for me in a very, how to say, in a very smooth and deeper way. And I traveled with him in many countries across Southeast Asia, and we lived together in different Buddhist monasteries where we practiced meditation. Yeah, this place where we met in the Himalayas also was a place where we would come back every year for our yearly silent retreat with him and other disciples of the specific teacher. And we were basically camping in the cave at 3,500 meters high in the Himalayas. We were surrounded by like snow peaks everywhere. And I mean, it was just incredible. I think that's really the most powerful memories that I have from my life, because it was so simple and so pure, but at the same time not easy, like we were high in the mountains. We had to hike for 7 hours with all the food in the backpack. And there was not many things around except hot springs, which were awesome to have. And that image I will never forget, I think. The Himalayas full of snow and you're just sitting in a hot spring. And I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. We were like super high-tech yogis, fully equipped with nice camping gear, but we were spending our time in silence and meditation. And yeah, it was just incredible.
Now, tell me about the lineage that your teacher comes from.
So my teacher basically teaches pure yoga philosophy. And I mean, if you want really the name of it, it's called Nat Sampradaya, which is Nat Yoga, which is in India, it's known as the very pure Ashtanga yoga, right? Which is based on the philosophy, which puts more emphasis on the mental aspect of the practice. Of course, the asanas and all the postures are very important, right? Because you need to keep this physical body healthy in order for you to be able to meditate. But yeah, his lineage and his teacher, he met his teacher actually where I met him. So my teacher is not an Indian person, but his teacher was Indian and he was living in that area where the cave is. And he was training my teacher in the way of meditation more. So that's what I learned from him as well.
And I think that I want to make sure that I ask that question what was it like to live in the cave? Because I can feel the hot spring, but what was the cave like? This is a bit of a disconnect for me. Help paint a picture.
I totally get it. It was a cave where we had enough space for like 4 people. And then everybody had their own little corner and we had like nice equipment that we brought up with us, mattresses and, sleeping bags and like really a nice mountain camping experience, just that you don't have a tent, but you have a cave. And then we were cooking on the fire. So as you come out of the cave, we constructed like a small roof. And then we covered it with like branches of the trees. And then, we made in such a way that we are protected from the rain and everything. And we were cooking on the fire and we had everything, like pots and pans and everything. But it was pretty simple. I mean, you just eat basically like rice with protein coming from beans and mung beans and red beans and some fish if it was a very nice day. And yeah, we were just learning Dharma and meditating a few times a day. Like I always say, it's not about the quantity, but the quality of doing it. And it was just very silent and still. And I mean, for sure, I think there were animals around and we didn't have any encounter with any kind of animal. But yeah, it's a special place. It's actually a very famous pilgrimage place in India. So a lot of people go there for like devotion reasons. And if they love meditation and yoga philosophy, they would do a pilgrimage like that once in their life, right? So.
Yeah. I know it's going to be incredibly reductive for me to ask that question, but I will. What's the most precious thing that you what's the most precious thing that you found out about yourself during those times?
I think the most precious thing was that I would still, regardless of the materiality that is around me, I would still be very happy with who I am and also this reflection, I carry it with me up to today because I had that experience where your happiness doesn't depend on material things and possessions that surround you, right? And that no matter what would happen, and if you take away all my material possessions away from me, I would still be happy and I would still know how to live my life with joy and contentment, right? So I think that was one of it, to realize that actually we don't need much to be fully joyful.
I really appreciate that you share that. I echo your sentiment. I feel like having practiced meditation for such a long time and so regularly with such wonderful teachers and practiced fasting as well.
Wow.
you develop a different relationship with your thoughts about what you think you need, about the stories we tell ourselves about what we need. And I think the gift for me would be establishing a distance between the reaction and the possible response in myself. Oh, but I need that. And going,
yes,
no, you don't.
Yes.
And this kind of like softening of knowing that you've done so well with so much less.
Completely, yeah.
So what would be a metaphor for the way that you are moving through the world right now?
Maybe I'm also a little bit influenced by the fact that there is the new Chinese New Year coming up soon, which is going to be the fire horse. So I was just imagining that horse moving like a horse who is like also jumping over the hurdles, right? And because what I'm doing right now, it's a quite a big transition phase in my life, and I feel like there are some hurdles here and there, like I guess in everyone's life when you are trying to change something, or you are in the middle of producing, be it, I don't know, in business or personal life or whatever it is. So yeah, I was seeing myself like a fire hose that jumps over hurdles.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And before we move into the big question that's alive for you, one more question to unveil one of the multiple facets that makes Oana. What's something that people might be surprised to learn about you that we haven't already talked about?
I really love singing, and I almost made a career as a singer. When I was a kid, I was learning to play piano, and I was actually singing. So I had a team behind me, and I sang in front of 16,000 people when I was 9 years old. And I was like going for it, but then somehow life took another turn and I changed my mind and I didn't do it anymore. But yeah, I still love to sing. So I have a guitar and I do sing every now and then just to, let it out. But yeah, that was almost a career path.
That's incredible. I'm so glad I asked the question. So now, Oana, you and I have talked about this before, and the reason why I ask my guests to go and find a question that feels alive is also as a mean to share who we are, not just as experts, right, who are presenting themselves to the world in a specific light, but also to share something that I will say is probably more human, because I deeply believe that all of us hold 2 or 3 questions that we try to answer throughout our lives, through our actions, our work, our relationships. And so tell me, what is the question that feels alive for you right now? Yes, it feels like it calls back to that book title that we explored earlier.
Yes, a little bit. Yeah.
And tell me, how did this become something you were aware of, that this was a question that was important to you?
So I think it's also, not only personal, but I work in a clinic, so I see patients every day, and seeing my patients, come in with symptoms such as anxiety, depression, insomnia, burnout, these are just to name a few, right? And I find that besides the obviously the physiological aspect of it, right? I mean, there is things that happen physiologically in the body, but I think a lot of symptoms also come from the fact that people, go a lot for performance, and they forget themselves in this path towards perfectionism and approval, and living outside of this integrity with what is important to them. So I speak a lot to my patients about personal values and this being integral to your values. And of course, it sounds like very vague, and a lot of us don't know if we haven't learned about it, right? And so what I say, it's always that your values are basically what animates you, right? We all of us wake up every single day for animating these values that we have, right? Whatever it is, maybe you wake up and you're animated by going to take care of your family, your kids, by going to work on your business, by, I don't know, generosity, sharing, intimacy. All of these things are what gives purpose to our life. And I see a lot of my patients having issues just because, maybe they wanted to say no and then they said yes, or they wanted to say yes and they said no. So there's always this contrast between the situation that is presented in front of you and the values that you have. And sometimes you don't take care of that. So I think we all have some dreams and we all have a vision of a perfect life. And we can go towards that and we can imagine that while we are staying connected to things that are important to us.
What does this question mean to you in this moment?
I think, we all live in a society and we all have relationships with either at work or with friends and family. And sometimes we have to compromise a little bit in order to have peace in our relationships. And so I think personally, I always, even if I have to, not always be integral to the values, even if I have to compromise a little bit, I know how to stay equanimous, so keep my mind still, to not have reactivity, even if I have to say no to some things that are important to me. So obviously, sometimes you need to juggle and compromise according to the situation that is presented to you. But I think for me, meditation, it helped me to have stillness in that, right? So instead of your mind being reactive because you had to do something that normally you wouldn't do, you would have stillness, right? So you would accept the situation because the greater goal, right? Or the bigger vision. So I think for me, it has always been the case, right? Because meditation, it's not about distancing yourself from hard decisions, and it's not about being indifferent, and it's not about accepting everything as it is. That's not what meditation is about. It's about not having reactivity of the mind, which is why we feel most of the time uneasy.
It's interesting, and I completely hear what you're saying. But part of what I feel when I hear you tell me about your work and your story is also perhaps an underlying worry or fear that you could, even though you have the tools, and I know that you're dedicated to the tools, that even when you have the tools, there's always that worry that you too could forget to stay. This is a gesture that my friend Libby does. It's funny that it came back to me. That you stay aligned. For anybody who's listening to this, I'm making a gesture with my hand to kind of show a sense of alignment. Is it possible that there's also an underlying fear in you?
I wouldn't call it a fear. I would call it more right effort. I would say that, there can always be so much situations, and the mind is it's a very complex thing, right? So even if you meditated for 10 years, that doesn't mean that you cannot lose it because you got angry and because continuously you have frustration, and it's something that you constantly need to put effort. I would say it's an effort that brings you to effortlessness at some point, because of repetition, right? Because you've done the right thing. And so it's part of the path as well, right? And it's not based on fear. I would say it is based on knowledge, because you know that certain mental tendencies can arise. And so you take care to not let them arise, right? Like reactivity, for instance, or, being angry or frustrated or etc.
I find that, and this is something that I learned from some of my teachers, and I just want to clarify this for anybody who may misunderstand, that anger and frustration are not just there to be pushed away, but these emotions are there to show us something about our condition, about our situation, whether it's internal or external, and that there's wisdom to be gained and knowledge to be gained if we work with it rather than just react. Because what I'm fearful people would understand is, I just need to push away the reactions. But the reactions are there to bring you some information about what you're feeling. I'm thinking about this because I know that right now the world is very fraught, that there's a lot of worry, there's a lot of wars and anguish and bad situations around the world. And a lot of people may feel what they think is righteous anger and frustration about whatever situation is unraveling in front of them. How do you feel about right effort or right action in that context?
Yes, I mean, I can only say from the perspective of Dharma and yoga philosophy is that, of course, you have certain mental qualities that come up. In the case of anger, for instance, you want to observe, of course, and you don't want to suppress, right? But also you want to be able to not let it happen again, right? Meaning that you understand why were you angry? You have an object and you were angry at it, and where is it coming from? And the antidote to that is acceptance, right? And I think, of course, we all don't like what is happening in the world at this moment, but on a personal level, having anger is also not very, very healthy, neither for your mind and neither for your body. Like in Chinese medicine, it relates to the liver and to the gallbladder. And so instead of anger, then you would have the antidote of that, which is acceptance. Accepting that anger is not good for your body and for your mind, right? So meditation is what actually calms down all this mental turbulences, right? And this is the nature of the mind, is to pop up with all this, frustration, anger, jealousy, delusion, all of these things. And meditation is like a mental shower, which just puts that all down. It's not looking away from it. It is working through that to give you wisdom and to give you a tool to know how to act on it when it happens. It's more like transformation, I would say, right? Because also anger, in the end, it's an energy, right? It's something that goes through you and you can transform that, right? Like in Chinese medicine, it's like fire, right? It's a lot of yang, a lot of movement,
Yes.
right? And you can transform that. You can transform it, I don't know, maybe creativity, right? Sing and write and dance, things like this, right? As well.
Oh, absolutely. I was thinking about it from an activist's point of view as well. I saw Jane Fonda the other day being interviewed on television, and she's doing some wonderful thing and has been an activist for all of her life. And I find that, so the channeling of the anger into something positive is important. But you're right. I think one of the things that you're pointing to, which a lot of us do not think about, and it is such an important thing to consider, is that emotions are meant to go through us. We're not meant to hold on to them. And somehow humans are built in such a way that we can hang on to big emotions, all of them, most likely the negative ones. And these then indeed sort of calcify and take root into the body. I appreciate you pointing to the way that anger can become nefarious for our inner organs. When you see your patients and you speak to them about personal values, what do you think is the hardest thing that, and is maybe an impossible question to answer, but what do you think is hardest for them to reconnect, to realign, to come back to what matters?
I mean, just before I went in holidays, I had this patient that came in telling me that he has burnout and that he feels completely empty, that he has nothing. If you take away his work from him, he works in finance and and he said, like, I'm in a medical leave and I have nothing else in my life. I'm empty. And so I started to talk about values, and I could see how difficult it was for him to connect to what I was saying because of specifically this emptiness that he feels inside of him. And then after a few sessions, we started to talk and we got to have a really nice progress. And then he said that actually I feel empty and I think the value that I'm missing is to have something which he called divinity, like something to which to look higher to. Like he said, I was brought into a family that told me that you need to just go and work and be a banker and, nothing else matters. His parents were atheists, and he had no place to actually develop his spiritual side, right? So after many discussions, we realized that actually it's very important to fill up this emptiness comes because you don't actually have a spiritual practice or something that gives sense and meaning to life, right? And so I think this is the most difficult one. When I say values, people are like, what is it exactly? So then I start to give examples, and then slowly, oh yeah, family is important to me. Oh yeah, my work is important to me. But is there only that in life?
Yeah. And that's a beautiful example. And for some reason, I'm feeling the emotion. It's incredibly sad. I mean, it's incredibly sad. And I feel a lot of empathy for this person. Now, the way that podcasts work, of course, is I don't know who's going to be listening. I don't know where people are who are going to be finding this interview. And I just want to say it's very precious that you brought this example that you and I had never talked about before. Because if you zoom out from where you and I are, not far from each other, yes. But in the center of Geneva, in Switzerland, which is a very rich, affluent Western country, you could think that spirituality is actually not a topic that's particularly important because people are doing well. And but of course, when people ask me why I am doing the work that I'm doing and why am I establishing Trente, a social learning studio, where do I talk about meditation and metta and benevolence and loving kindness and invite people like you who do multiple things and who also have a connection to a strong spiritual lineage and a contemplative practice. It's because I come from here, and I saw a lot of disconnection. So I still witness, and I'm sure you do too, and it exists everywhere. But I think that perhaps part of my mission is to say, it's here too. Let's not start somewhere else in the world. Let's start where, look at that alignment. Let's start where I'm from. Let's loop that circle, come back to my origins. And I always joke with my friends, well, wouldn't the world be a lot better if all the bankers were happier? if they did find a sense of deep alignment and benevolence and kindness. I mean, I know half of our financial services are going to be sorted by AI, but again, if the people who are building AI are feeling better in themselves, are feeling nourished, the opposite of what you're describing, right? The opposite of emptiness. What would the world look like if our financial place was operating from inner riches?
Oh yeah, that's a good one, Anne. It's a name of another book. It's your book.
Let's see about that. Wow. Yeah, I feel a lot of empathy for this disconnection, because for most of my life I operated from a sense of disconnection between, but also having also grown up in a relatively atheist environment. First believed that the mind was separate from the body and that the mind was more important, that what was in the mind was really what was valuable, and that work was that way forward. It's a very Protestant ethic, I would guess. Not that I'm a specialist.
Yeah.
And then it took years and years and years of noticing breakdowns in the body and illness and autoimmune. My body screaming at me for many years, for me to finally come back to saying, oh, maybe I need to go inwards to see if something is calling for my attention. And it was. How do you
Totally.
feel? How do you feel is one way that anyone listening could perhaps practice connection with themselves or with their body? What would be something small and accessible that someone can try for themselves?
I think, and I always tell to my patients, 3 minutes of breath work every day will take you a long way because it's a moment of stillness. It's very beneficial to your nervous system. And it's also a way to slow down, right? Because in our fast paced modern world, we are eating fast, I know, walking fast, working fast, everything is fast, fast, fast. And I think breath work and especially focusing on the exhales, right? So you can inhale for
Yeah.
4 seconds and then exhale for 6 or 8, depending on your lung capacity, just to slow down. And that's super accessible. I mean, it's not like you are going to do it for half an hour, it's 3 minutes, right? Breath work. And I think also paying attention to doing things slower, right? Chewing your food, eating slow, walking slow, not rushing, because you're not gonna change the world or your life by saving 1 minute, right? It's we are way too fast, and I think that's also part of the disconnection, right? And another one, I think, I mean, the opposite of disconnection is connection. So that's one, connection to yourself. But I think connection to the others is so important. Also in the world of AI, where we are just more and more distancing ourselves from one another. So, connecting and trying to build meaningful relationships and just simple things, smiling to another person, opening the door for someone, the small gestures that we kind of forget as we become more and more individualistic and focused on ourselves only. Yeah. And also, of course, meditation. I think if we can take a few moments and just close your eyes and sit with yourself and bring a hand on the chest, a hand on the belly, see how you're breathing, see where there is tension in the body. Just doing this body scan is it's easy and also very relaxing.
Yeah. What I find utterly fascinating is every single time someone tells me about breathing, I breathe better. Isn't it crazy?
Yes.
It reminds me to
Yes.
breathe better. And so I
Yes.
think that I really hope this has felt like a cue for you listening to take a deeper breath in and deeper breath out. And this got me the idea of asking Oana, would you do me a huge favor? Would you record, and we don't need to do it today, but a short 3-minute breath practice for our community? And that we
Of
can post it
course.
and add it to the show notes. Because that way, we're also giving you just click the link, get the example, follow the cues. Yeah, one of my teachers said that the breath is the language of the nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if we can just double check with our breath and just reset our nervous system, we're doing a lot for ourselves.
Completely. Yeah, with so
I'll,
much pleasure. I think breath work it's so great. There's so many ways so much space to actually improve your lung capacity and bring more oxygen into the blood and oxygenate your brain, and that's how you're going to regulate your nervous system. It's the best. So yeah, with pleasure. Let's do that.
Yay. Perhaps what we can do to close is
Mm-hmm.
to share a moment of reflection. I have a couple of questions I can ask you.
Okay.
So the first thing would be, what surprised you in our discussion?
The easiness to which you actually make the person feel so connected to themselves and how you bring the past and the present together. It was for me really fascinating.
Oh, thank you so much. For me, I have to say I loved, and I could not have expected the story about you and your grandfather in the forest of Romania,
I
hunting
really
for
didn't expect
mushrooms.
you were asking about the past and yeah, all this, like, what was the metaphors and how you see yourself going through life now. This is just so beautiful. I feel like it does bring up some childish energy from us, and then it becomes, I don't know, you become joyful about talking about yourself, right? Because, like I said, for me, it isn't easy. So it's like, oh,
Tell
okay,
me
there's
about
some
it.
playfulness. Yeah.
Yes, of course. For many of us, I know it's not for everybody, but for many of us, talking about ourselves is a chore, and it's a misalignment, right? Because you know you really want to talk about your work and what you do, but you also feel really uncomfortable. Well, I'm so happy
Yeah.
that this felt
Yeah, thank you. It was
good.
very, very sweet. Super nice. I really enjoyed, and I could talk for another 2 hours. And yeah, it's very nice. Very, you are a great coach.
Me
It's
too.
therapy. It's therapy.
Well, I want to thank you so much for making the space, for indulging me in this format for the conversation. And I want to announce to our listeners that Oana is also going to be delivering a couple of masterclasses online and in person in Geneva to go deeper, particularly around yoga, philosophy, and meditation, which are important to both of us. We come from different lineages and there's a lot of echoes in our practices. And I'm really, really excited about this coming up. So thank you so much. Is there anything I need to add? Maybe we can close on a moment of silence and taking a breath together. How does that feel?
Definitely. Yes. Perfect. Thank you, Anne. And thank you for having me. And thank you for what you're doing with Le Trente Studio. I think it's an amazing project and initiative. And we have so much to learn from you and the way you concoct your podcasts and your master classes and how you bring people together. For those who are listening, I've been to some of her salons in Geneva, and I've always made such amazing connections. And yeah, and she's an angel in Geneva.
That's so sweet. Thank
And
you
she
so
cooks super well as well.
Yeah, it's funny you should say concoction because I feel like we have a connection with herbs. I could
Yeah.
totally see myself in a previous life with a pot and lots of herbs in it. How
Totally.
funny. So shall we close our eyes? Do you want to lead us into just 1 minute of breathing?
Sure. So take a deep breath in. Fill up your chest with as much air as you need and breathe out completely with your mouth open. And now one more time, all the way in, fill up your chest and your upper back and relax your shoulders. And breathe out fully. You can make a sound, let it all out. And we're gonna bring a hand to our upper chest and one hand onto the diaphragm, the upper abdomen area. And we're gonna breathe into our hands softly and letting the breath settle as it is. Not trying to change anything, just feeling and taking this moment to thank yourself, to be grateful for taking time to listen and to enrich this beautiful day.
Oh, thank you so much, Joanna. That was beautiful. Much gratitude for you, for your work, for the light that you shine, for your beautiful face on my screen this morning.
Oh, thank you, Anne. Same.
I'm completely going to ask you about singing next time I see you, by the way.
Yes, we can do a mantra singing circle. Actually, that
Oh
would
my
be
God, that
fun.
would be amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll put all of the links for people to figure out how to connect to you in the show notes. And I will end on wishing you a beautiful, beautiful rest of the day.
You too, Anne. Thank you, and looking forward to see you soon. Bisous.
Hey, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation on the Meta interview. If this resonated with you and you haven't subscribed yet, then please do so. You don't want to miss the brilliant minds I will continue to bring on to these conversations. The Meta interview is available wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also watch the full video conversations on YouTube. You'll find the link in the show notes. Also, I'd love to invite you to subscribe to my newsletter, The Metta View. It's the cousin to the Metta Interview. You'll find it at themettaview.com, and it's Metta with 2 T's. In that newsletter, I regularly share written reflections and insight that complement these conversations. That's where I approach and work through life with a mindful lens. If you're intrigued as well about the masterclasses that my wonderful, brilliant friends and guests are offering through the Trente, if you're excited and want to know about our events online and in person, about coaching and or working with me one-on-one, visit letrente.com, that's letrente.com, to discover more about our community and our offerings. Now, before I leave you, your engagement helps these conversations reach more people who may benefit from them. So please do me a huge favor. Share this episode with someone who may appreciate it. Leave us a rating, a review. You can even comment on each episode on Spotify, for example. So every little bit of support will help, and it's really lovely to hear from you and to find out what you think about what we're putting out in the world. Until next time, thanks for listening.